Guys, welcome to another episode of KSP Resurgence. Today we are landing on Krob, a moon of Sanctar. There are three moons of Sanctar: Krob, Alia, and Silly. Silly is in a rather inclined orbit, it's an asteroid, so it's a little out of reach with the tech we have right now. And Alia is the closest moon, though it has quite a thick atmosphere because we're terraforming it, so it's a little difficult to reach. So we're just gonna do a flyby of Alia and Krob for now before we land on Krob because we need a little bit more science. So you may be realizing why I'm adding these white tanks. They're not for monopropellant, they're for a little thing called substance called T-Teb. T-Teb is basically a mixture of triethyl borate and triethyl aluminum or something like that. Basically, the Terrier with chemical technologies is a Keralox rocket. It burns kerosene and oxidizes it with liquid oxygen. However, a Keralox reaction is really hard to start, so regular electric charge isn't going to do. But T-Teb, triethyl borate and triethyl aluminum react on contact, and they combust really hot, so we can use that to start a reaction. Fortunately, we only have a finite amount of it, so we only have a limited number of ignitions. However, other types of rockets don't have this issue. Sometimes, some rockets just use electric charge to ignite, so as long as you keep recharging your batteries, you should be good. Others just react on contact, like hypergolic rockets that use hydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide and other stuff like that. So now we're adding some solid rocket boosters to help these swivel engines propel the rocket. I tried using several options, but I felt like the Thumper was like the best one. Now I'm adding the text because it's not complete without a text. I have to scale it and add the depth. Don't forget to add the Roman numerals. I didn't do this last episode. Put Bob Kerman in there, and here we are on the launch pad. Take off. We are well on our way to space. Oh, well, we're only 1,000 meters up, but we're gonna get way higher than that. I forgot to auto-strut, so I'm making sure I'm auto-strutting so our rocket isn't all wobbly. Just saw some vapor cones from the Vapor Cones mod. Good mod, I would highly recommend downloading that. We are nearing booster separation because okay. Next booster separation. Gonna pitch it down a bit more because well, it's on the yaw axis, but it's effectively it's kind of like pitching down, just so we get a more steep trajectory, shallow actually. Because we might make an efficient gravity turn. You know, when I was a KSP noob, I did not gravity turn. I did not like do a thorough enough gravity turn. I always went too steep because I was afraid my rocket was going to tip over. Usually that isn't a problem if your rocket is aerodynamically sound and like not completely extremely unstable. Now I'm checking my electric charge here because this rocket cannot maneuver well in space with that big, massive lower stage attached to it. And also we do not have solar panels. The only way to recharge your command pod is via the engine's alternator. And we have orbit. So first we're gonna go Krob and then we're gonna hit Alia on the way back. Fortunately, we're probably not going to be landing there for quite a bit because its atmosphere provides quite the challenge. However, we probably will land that next episode or the episode afterward. But we're still doing a landing this episode. We're landing on Krob. Now, Krob is a very interesting moon. Most of it's gray, but there's some blue spots on it, and it has plenty of blue crystals. What are they made of? Only one way to find out. I'm currently fiddling around with a maneuver tool, just trying to get a decent encounter that doesn't fly me on an escape trajectory. Fortunately, I wasn't able to get a good encounter that was close to Krob, so I just had to only do it from high above Krob, and then I was able to go to Alia from there, as you'll soon see. We're now burning prograde. However, our lower stage is about to run out of fuel. And then we're using our second stage. Meaning else we didn't use any T-Teb because the arterial engine had a fixed igniter. It can only be used once though. So they're there just in case if you're using your launch vehicle, you don't have to put T-Teb tanks inside, which is pretty convenient. It also gives you an extra ignition. And now we have a Krob encounter. Though we won't stay here for long, unfortunately. However, we'll come back very, very soon. One thing I find really annoying about Kerbal Space Program Science Mode is that you always just have to go out and get all the science experiments. You could solve this by using like an experiment container. I'm trying to get like a good I'm trying to get a good thumbnail pic here, but it's not working. So one bad thing I really don't like about the science mode is that you always have to get out and collect the experiments manually. You could solve this by using an experiment container, but then you still have to go out and reset them manually, like the mystery goo and the Science Junior. The thermometer and the barometer don't suffer from this issue, but like I think it's only the mystery goo and the Science Junior. Modded parks like some greenhouses also suffer from this, and it's really hard to reset them because no matter how close I get to them, the reset button never appears. So sometimes they're just one-use experiments. The only way to reset them is through a laboratory, because that's the convenient thing about laboratories, is that you can reset experiments without having to go on EVA. We have concluded our Krob flyby. Now we are planning to go to Alia, so I just have to plot my course. But just to make things easier, I'm just gonna circularize my orbit. I can't pronounce that, sorry. One thing I really find annoying is that I think it's persistent thrust that keeps doing this. It keeps kicking me out of time warp like hours or days before I actually have to do the burn. Like, it always does it at an hour or 9 minutes before I have to burn. It also does that at like a minute and 40 seconds all the time, but by then it's already almost time to burn, so I don't care. Persistent thrust has a bunch of bugs. Like, sometimes it keeps making my if I'm trying to point retrograde relative to my target, it keeps pointing me retrograde relative to my orbit. Like I'm pointing retrograde to the target, but then it just teleports my rocket. Well, it doesn't really teleport, it just snaps instantly to retrograde to orbit, which makes rendezvous really difficult. Sometimes it doesn't glitch out like that, other times it does. It's really annoying. I'm also trying to get a trajectory set up so that I immediately get flung back into Sanctar's atmosphere. But I couldn't really. It wasn't really quite into sync. No, actually, I think I got it figured out here. But I might want to burn prograde a little bit more just so I don't get flung into the atmosphere at Mach 60. Something crazy like that, so I don't explode. Kerbal heat shields are like extremely powerful in the stock game. You can literally go into an atmosphere at 9,000 meters per second and still survive. You know, the stock scale at 1/10 real life scale is laughably easy sometimes, especially after you've played like JNSQ or another mod or rescaled your system 2.5 times. I was gonna rescale this 2.5 times, but I just couldn't get it to work because there are some bugs, especially with Trom, which is an oblate dwarf planet. Like whenever I try rescaling it, Sigma Dimensions, which is what I use to rescale the system, it always broke oblate planets. So whenever I try landing there, like the physics engine broke. Not to mention it didn't look very good either. So I just decided to do stock scale this time. I believe we're now in Alia sphere of influence, so now we're gonna do a bunch of science. I did think about doing an atmospheric dip, just so we can dip our toes into the atmosphere, get a little bit more science, but I felt like it was a little bit too dangerous. I could have done it, but I just didn't feel like it. There's Alia, our terraformed moon. It's almost done being terraformed, but if you take a closer look, you can notice the craters and stuff. See, that was once an inhospitable vacuum moon. Did it once have a very thin atmosphere? I'm not actually sure. I don't really know what it looked like before we terraformed it, because I don't think there's any material on that. The Sanctar Alia system is very similar to the Rogue Lua system from Beyond Home, which Celestial Harmony, this mod, is kind of a successor to Beyond Home. I really wanted to play Beyond Home, but it's not compatible with Parallax Continued and Volumetric Clouds. Although Ballistic Fox, who's the current maintainer of it, is going to update that in the near future. So maybe that'll be like a good idea for the series after this. But that's like months in the future. We're talking about now. This series is going to be a really long one because there's so many destinations to visit. We got the entire Harmonia system. We got the Chaos system. We have the what was the Chaos system? The brown dwarf that was going to be added. Well, we got like multiple star systems. Eventually, the old remnants of the Tempest system. It's now going to be called Misfortune. Oh wait! Oh no! Oh no! I time warped too much, and now Bob is dead. How inconvenient. Thankfully, I had a quick save, so I could just load that, and we're not dead. So now I'm gonna be a little bit more careful with the time warp to make sure Bob doesn't die again. So where were we? Oh yeah, we're gonna go to the Misfortune, or what was left of the Tempest system, and there are also plans for the remnants of the Kerbal system. It's gonna be very, very dim though, because Kerbal is long gone, just a very dim white dwarf now. And Beyond Home, Lathe, or Tau as it's called, still has a life on it. I wonder if in Celestial Harmony, if it will have life too. I suppose I'll have to wait for that update to come out. Proxima, who's the dev of this mod, did a really great job. Yeah, I spec this part up a bit. Well, no, the previous part, I slowed it down because it gets a little interesting because we're descending into a thunderstorm. Thankfully, Volumetric Clouds doesn't actually add like weather or wind to the game. Well, it adds weather, but it's all visual. So it won't. I believe it doesn't blow you around, and I don't think lightning will kill your craft either. Even if it does strike my capsule, which it doesn't, I know, it probably won't destroy it. The worst it'll do is burn the parachute. But like if you're flying in an airplane, if it gets struck by lightning, I think you'll actually be fine. Yeah, here I am goofing off with the panels inside the capsule. It's added by like JSI, I think, Chunk Systems Inc., and ASET and stuff like that. And it adds a bunch of really cool panels inside. It's really good with a mod FreeIVA. Now, with that science, I was able to get a bunch of parts. And this will all help us for the Krob mission. I'm just looking at those truss parts in the Advanced Construction tab. You know, one thing that really annoys me about the tech tree is that ion engines are on the completely other on the other side of the tech tree than the nuclear engines. So that by the time you unlock the plasma engines, you're already on like advanced fusion or like fission fragment engines. If I make my own tech tree, I'm gonna have them really close together just so ion engines are a viable alternative to nuclear propulsion. I mean, if you don't have far future technologies, this isn't as much as a problem because the all the plasma engines are better than the Kerbal Atomic's best nuclear engines. However, you're still going to have to lug around the massive nuclear reactor. But at least you can refuel the nuclear reactor. The Emancipator rocket from Kerbal Atomics. If you're wondering, Kerbal Atomics is a mod that adds more nuclear engines. I believe the Emancipator, which is the best nuclear rocket, uses is an open cycle gas core, so it literally spews out uranium. So that's a finite resource in the engine's case, so you can't really use it too much. And that's kind of off topic right now because we're still in very early chemical rockets. So these engines are hypergolic in this lander, so meaning that the propellants ignite on contact. So we don't have to fiddle around with any ignition sequences. You don't need electric charge, T-Teb, or any of that. I was gonna have like a 2.5 meter fairing, but then I realized, oh wait, I don't have a 2.5 meter engine plates, so I decided to scrap that. But looking back, I think I could have used the procedural interstages. This mod is procedural fairing, if you're wondering, if you wanted these cool fairings for yourself. Just a quick warning if you do use it though. Don't forget to auto-strug it, because if you don't, it will fall apart and your entire spaceship will blow up. Also, you do want procedural perks with this, because I tried using it without it, and I couldn't rescale the fairings for some reason. And then I installed procedural parts, and that just fixed the issue. I don't really use procedural parts too much. I mean, I would have used them for like fusion fuels because rational resources makes them makes the procedural tanks like be able to hold a bunch of stuff, like all sorts of fuels. But then chemical technologies added patches for those, added configs. So now I can't put fusion fuels in it. I have to use a tiny little tanks that the very first of fusion rocketry gets you. Yeah, I may have noticed I had a little cut there. I had to get off, and I came back to finish my lander, so that's why I kind of cut off for a little bit. I remember that I had a bunch of 2.5 meter parts, so I decided to make the lower stage that diameter. I really wish there were more mods adding parts for more niche profiles, like 1.875 meter. And other diameters, because I really feel like there aren't enough command pods for that. The stock system sure does have one command pod. Near future spacecraft does have a bunch of 1.25 and 2.5 meter command pods, but it doesn't add any 1.875 meter parts. Sure, there is missing history. It does have a pretty cool command pod, but it uses the a placeholder IVA. And also, it looks a little dated, so I really wish someone would make a mod. That'd be really nice. We are almost done assembling the rocket. I decided to use a skipper engine. It kind of bothers me that it's labeled as a Keralox rocket, even though the plume obviously looks like a Hydrolox or hydrogen rocket engine. But it's supposed to be the little brother, so to speak, of the mainsail engine, which is obviously a kerosene rocket, so I guess it kind of makes sense. We are now taking off. It's a beautiful day at the Kerbal Space Center. With the new Kerbal Space Center. Because this is the fourth Kerbal Space, or the fifth if you count before Kerbal. Because first we lived on Eve, or Egan, and before Kerbal. If you don't know, there's a whole series of mods, like there's 4 of them by Games Links, before Kerbal, well actually 3, because the stock system doesn't count. Celestial Harmony, in case you don't know, is a successor to Beyond Home, which is Beyond Home is a successor to After Kerbal, which which takes place after the stock system, and then there's before Kerbin, which is kind of like the beginning of it. So before Kerbin, the Kerbals lived on Eve or Egan, then a moon crashed into it and turned into Eve. So Kerbals colonized Kerbin and terraformed it, but then Kerbal became a red giant and made Kerbin uninhabitable, so they had to land on Duna and live there. It's called Solitude and after Kerbin. And then they moved to the Tempest system after Kerbal gets more unstable. They colonize Rogue and live there. They terraform it. And then eventually in Celestial Harmony, the Tempest system grows old and dies. Destiny, I believe, is a big star in the Tempest binary system. It turns into a red giant and swallows Fate, the red dwarf, creating Misfortune, which is the star that's going to represent the remnants of the Tempest system. That's going to be added to Celestial Harmony in a future update. And now I live on Syncdar. It's a much more beautiful planet than Rogue, because it has a lot more greenery. Rogue is just a giant dirt ball with oceans. This upper stage is using Methalox rockets, so it's burning methane. It's more efficient than kerosene, but not quite as efficient as hydrogen. But you don't need as much volume, because you need a lot of hydrogen tanks, because hydrogen has a very low volume density. So don't need as big as a rocket. Now, I did encounter a glitch here. You may be wondering, hey, why is there a Kerbal Konstructs launch pad on Krob? Are you cheating? Well, actually, I'm not cheating. It's just that in another save file, I was testing out Kerbal Colonies, which uses Kerbal Konstructs to place buildings down. But apparently, I guess it also goes through every save file. So if you place one colony in one save file, it places in every save file. I was able to disable visibility of the launch pads just so it's kind of out of the way. It's just kind of annoying how it's always there. I hope there's like a fix for that, so Kerbal Constructs has like different launch pads for different save files, so it's more of a Kerbal Colonies issue. Just relies on Kerbal Constructs. Now, I'm about to encounter a weird issue. So basically with most cryogenic rockets like Methalox and Hydrolox rockets need electric charge to ignite it. However, I didn't have enough electric charge to ignite all 4 of my engines back there in a previous burn. So it failed to ignite, but 2 of them were able to ignite. So my center of thrust was off balance, so I spun around there. I realized the issue and was able to correct myself. Now here we are at Krob. I sped this part up just because I didn't want the video game too long. I believe the raw unedited footage is like around 40 or 50 minutes. I shaved like 20 minutes off just for you guys, so... I'm gonna land now. I'm gonna land on the lowlands. I'm gonna do a lot of biome hopping because I put a lot of fuel on this lander. So I'm gonna land on the lowlands, the erotic valleys, the midlands, and then the highlands. If you look down, you may notice there are a bunch of geodes. Don't be deceived though, they actually aren't there. Well, they are there, it's just that they disappear as soon as you get too close, but then they reappear in different locations. It's just a weird issue with Kerbal Space Program. And don't worry, if you don't find a geode, you'll find plenty of crystals. I did disable parallax collisions because I didn't want one landing leg to land on a rock and then kill my entire spacecraft. I might re-enable collisions later, but for now it's just completely disabled. Because another time I was playing on another save file, I landed on a rock, like one leg landed on a rock, and it glitched out and broke. So Celestial Harmony, the first interplanetary destination, I believe, would be a good idea to visit, is either Trom or Valhilheim. Valhilheim is closer to Harmonia than Sanctar. Harmonia is the star, if you were orbiting, by the way. However, it's a little harder than, say, Dunga, because although it has a very thin atmosphere, that being zero point 0.1 atmosphere, it still has 0.8 Gs of gravity. So you need quite somewhat of a bigger lander to land on it than Dunga. However, the atmosphere, although thin, is thin enough just to be able it's thick enough to be able to aerobrake. Trom, on the other hand, is a dwarf planet that's much easier to land on, though it's quite inclined in its orbit and also kind of hard to reach because it's further out. It also has a bunch of moons if you want to land on there. Then there's Rack. Now, Rack isn't a part of Celestial Harmony, it's a part of Proxima's better Dres. So, if you have the stock system installed, you can get Proxima's better Dres. It's made by the same person who made Celestial Harmony. Then you can have a revamped Dres in the stock system. But if you install it with Celestial Harmony, it adds a new body called Rack, which is in a very similar orbit to Dres. So you can visit Dres in Celestial Harmony. You can visit Dres in Celestial Harmony. Kind of. I'm pretty sure if like all the Kerbals back on Sanctar knew that Rack looked exactly like Dres, they'd probably start some weird conspiracy theory. I mean, first we got Dres not existing, and then we got Dres like teleporting billions of years into the future. Maybe that's why Dres doesn't exist. It's because it got teleported billions of years into the future. We have made our second landing. 2 out of 4. We're doing 4 biome hops. Or 3 if you don't count the first landing. We're gonna get a lot of signs from this, as you will soon see in a few minutes. A really useful mod for these biome hops is Kerbal Engineer Redux. It tells you where you're going to land, though not very accurately if you're in an atmosphere. But it also tells you what biome you're going to land in. It tweaks out during time warp, but without time warp it works perfectly fine. The only thing I find difficult is the suicide burn countdown, because whenever I try using it, it's always inaccurate. However, the part where you're landing the biomes is completely fine. The only issue you may find is that you may end up being in a different biome than where you actually land in because you burn retrograde. So if you didn't even burn, you would have crashed in the biome Kerbal Engineer Redux you said you'd land in, because you ended up landing in a biome right next to your land site. So that's just a little thing to keep in mind when trying to land with Kerbal Engineer Redux. On a similar note, I don't have MechJeb installed just because I feel like I don't have a reason to. Although if enough of you guys in the comments nag me about it, then I might install it. Oh, by the way, if you've kept watching this long, thank you. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you're still here watching this, then you probably like the video, so why don't you like it? Please. I want likes. Please, help me. And if you really do like my videos, then please subscribe, because there's more KSP Resurgence coming in the future. I believe this is our third biome hop we're doing. This is our final biome hop before we finally decide to go home. We're trying to land in the Highlands because I noticed the Midlands were rather close to the Highlands. Very short biome hop away. I've seen shorter biome hops though. The other really good thing about chemical technologies is that you unlock different fuels that rockets can use. So for example, later down the tech tree, you can use pentaborane instead of hydrazine. It also serves as an alternative to kerosene, but only in jet engines, because jet engines use kerosene instead of liquid fuel. Something I've noticed in Kerbal Space Program 2 is that they replaced liquid fuel with methane, and the jet engines burn methane too. Which is kind of strange, because I've never heard of jets burning methane, but I'm sure it is possible. I prefer like the solution Chemical Technologies has to offer, because instead of just methane, it offers like a bunch of other fuels like kerosene, hydrogen, also numerous oxidizers like liquid oxygen, high test peroxide, a bunch of other really cool stuff. Also with ignition, which is a dependency, it also deals with how you ignite your engines. Sometimes it's hypergolic, you don't need anything to ignite it. It ignites on contact, the fuels ignite on contact with each other. Sometimes you need electric charge, other times you need a finite resource, finite liquid like T-Teb or something to start kerosene oxygen reactions. That's another reason I chose hypergolic rockets engines instead of the Terrier engine, was so I didn't have to bring any starter fluid with me. I sped this part up, just because it's kind of boring when just going back home. Nothing explodes at this time, so it's significantly less fun. In case you didn't notice, Celestial Harmony actually has a custom skybox. So if you have Sigma replacements installed, you should see a custom skybox. Unless you have like another skybox mod that conflicts with it, then I'll just use that skybox instead. If you don't have Celestial Harmony, I would recommend getting the Calm Nebula skybox, because that's like what everyone uses, and it's also my favorite because it looks amazing. Though there are plenty of alternatives. Now, you may notice that we are actually doing several, that I didn't put my periapsis low enough, so we're going to have to do several aerobrake passages. And I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to get Bob coming out and just push against the capsule, just to lower our periapsis, so we get deeper into the atmosphere and actually land. This is also a good strategy if you run out of fuel. I think I have to do that once or twice in previous playthroughs. Got some amazing visuals, courtesy of Firefly. If you're wondering how I'm recoloring parts, it's via a mod called Textures Unlimited Recolor Depot. And it's a great mod for recoloring parts, but unfortunately you need separate configs. So you need to download a config for like restock, near future, etc. However, the restock config I do have is incomplete, and with development for it actually got canceled for this Texture Unlimited Recolor Depot or Turk config, because a restock PBR exists and there may be no reason for Turk to exist. Now I got 2,000 science from that mission, and I'm gonna go on a shopping spree for tech nodes. You got command pods, you got advanced control, miniaturization, advanced electrics, space exploration. It's a bunch of stuff. Really cool. So we're gonna get a lot of parts just so we can do more missions in the future. I'm not gonna unlock Pentaboring until later. So yeah, we're getting a lot of parts. Now unfortunately that is the last mission for this episode. I hope to see you guys soon. I will see you guys later. I'm just taking one last peek at the tech tree here. So please come back for more soon. Another episode. I'm kind of uploading haphazardly. I'm trying to upload bi-weekly here. So that is the end of this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry. And I'll see you guys later. Bye!